Dennis Kucinich, who's a congressman in the United States. Do you know Dennis?
Yeah.
You do?
I know of him, I don't know.
Oh, okay. Dennis actually introduced a bill in the House of Representatives several years ago banning things like banning chemtrails.
Yes.
And they leaned on him so heavily that he had to withdraw the bill 2 days later.
Yes, I've looked at this chemtrails business, and as far as I can tell from a not very detailed examination of it, the atmospheric monitoring that we do on our estate, and it's done all over the world, is not showing any systematic increase in any particular particulate or other pollutant of what would normally be in the air, apart from CO2, which you can detect going up a little bit, but again not very much.
What measurements did you do? I didn't hear.
We have a rather sophisticated atmospheric monitoring station on the estate, which is maintained by one of the local universities. And
right.
Nothing. I go and look at the readings from time to time, and I can't see anything particular. Well, certainly in that.
I brought you these to have a quick look at.
Yes, they look rather like condensation trails.
Well, have a look at. There's only 3 of them. They won't burn you.
Well, those are condensation trails. Those are, I don't know what that is.
That's a geostat.
Is this a satellite? It must be.
Yes, that's right.
Angle of horizon.
Yes, right.
So I ain't sure what that's all about.
Okay. Have a look at the third one.
Looked to me like condensation trails again. Sure. And that looks like condensation trails.
Hold it up to the camera, would you, so we could record that?
There's the picture.
Now, those, you think those are condensation trails?
Well, I mean, I am no expert, let me tell you. So, first of all, if you're wanting scientific advice on this, don't come to me. I can see several different things going on. I can see that at altitude, as I would expect, there is laminar wind flow, as indicated by the way some of the trails at the right angle are dissipating. I can see a new trail being created by a plane higher up. This is over. Where are we looking at? This river?
Oh, I don't remember.
It's quite important to know where it is, because then one could work out what the pattern of air traffic ought to be.
Well,
and
one of these pictures actually. This has nothing to do with air traffic. They're crisscrossing all over the place. Have a look at this. I'll hold this up for John here for a moment. My air traffic control friend says that they really try very hard to keep planes from doing that in the commercial world. And that contrails or condensation trails actually disappear rather quickly after an airplane goes by.
Well, it depends on the atmospheric conditions.
No,
I've seen this myself
every last one of these, and we have seen hundreds of them, actually spreads out across the sky and turns blue sky sickly grayish yellow. So we started looking into this, and sure enough, it's a real phenomenon.
Well, the question is really very simple. If it isn't showing up in my atmospheric monitoring, what am I doing wrong?
I don't know.
What are you testing for?
Well, just about every particulate matter, because we are in an unusually clean air area in Rannoch in the Central Highlands of Scotland. Some of the cleanest air on Earth is up there. And so they're looking to see whether pollutants of any kind are reaching our remote location. And I mean, there are some, but they're what you would expect to find from an industrial civilization. They haven't found anything that they wouldn't expect to find.
Do you see trails like that crisscrossing over your property?
Well, no, because we get very few flights over us, and if they do come, they're already at a very great altitude by the time they get to us, because they'll be taking the polar route, and they'll be coming, say, from Edinburgh Airport, and they'll be going well up in the
anyhow, we practice some.
And so, and in any case, in Scotland you have clouds most of the time, so you wouldn't see them. So we're not a good place to observe these things from. But in any case, the central question is, if there were somebody spraying things into the atmosphere, then I would expect this to show up systematically in atmospheric monitoring.
How do you know that it
take,
isn't,
if
and
you
the
take,
data isn't being censored?
well, because I'm not a conspiracy theorist,
Okay.
Yeah.
unless I can see some reason for a conspiracy to exist and find some evidence for
After
it.
Fukushima
then-
went off, the United States EPA actually shut down a lot of its monitoring stations.
Well, I mean, I don't know why it did that.
Well,
but
it
in
seems
any
pretty
case,
simple.
the atmospheric monitoring that happens on our estate has not been shut down.
Okay,
And,
that's okay.
And
but,
so my
this is a
single
very-
question is this: that if this were happening,
Yeah,
then because we are a curious race, there would be some
there is.
scientists of relevant qualifications
Yes, plenty
who
of
have
them.
been able to assemble data from atmospheric monitoring stations all around the world and to publish in peer-reviewed journals of respectability an account of this, and to demonstrate that there were definitely changes in the chemical composition of the atmosphere that appeared systematic over perhaps a region, over a continent, or perhaps over the whole world.
They actually
But I have not seen
no,
any such papers, and therefore, if there are
We better send them
any,
some.
I should like to have the references.
Okay,
And
we'll-
until I have seen the references,
Right.
I
Fair
shall
enough.
not be in a position to comment.
Sure.
Because at the moment, my understanding
Well-
is that there's no such thing.
Okay.
And I may be wrong, but until I have seen the references, I ain't going to talk about it any further.
It's on the list.
The Royal Society and other wonderfully esteemed groups as those that had actually changed the name. As you noted correctly last night, global warming has morphed into climate change, which is morphing into extreme weather. I thought that was really good. What's happened here with the chemtrails is that the Royal Society and other esteemed scientists of that nature have come out now to push the geoengineering line.
Yeah, that I've seen, and I think it's characteristic of modern day science that you should seek. I mean, modern day scientists, of course, are almost by definition rent seekers first and foremost. That's the economic term for people who don't want to make a living by working in the private sector. They'd rather sit back comfortably and be paid by the taxpayer and not have to work too hard in return. And 99% of science now is funded by the taxpayer. There's very little funded in comparison by the private sector. And as a result, scientists have got very good at working out ways of extracting very large amounts of money from the taxpayer for various boondoggles. And I used to work at number 10 Downing Street, and one of my jobs was to be a boondoggle detector. I detected some real Lulus in my time, some of which were scientific, some of which were political, but all of which would have been a terrific waste of money if we'd allowed them to happen. And I think since my time, there's not been a boondoggle detector in Downing Street, and therefore public spending has got completely out of control. The point about geoengineering is really this: even if you could make some form of it work, and even if it was necessary in the first place, which I don't think it is, the atmosphere is a rather large place. And because the atmosphere is so big, the cost of trying to do any significant geoengineering would be so large that it would be entirely prohibitive. We're already running out of money because we've been trying to spend money on all this global warming stuff. That in its own is, as I showed in my talk that you kindly came to last night, prodigiously expensive in return for the very small reductions in global temperature you might foresee in relation to what you spend. Now, geoengineering is even worse than that, because the volume of the atmosphere, though Al Gore in his movie talked about it as just the thickness of a fingernail on a traditional globe, it is still enormous. And to try to put enough chemicals or water vapor spray from the sea, or whatever fancy idea they have, to act as parasols to shade us from the rays of the sun and stop us from being fried by carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, the cost of that would be entirely disproportionate to any benefit, even if there were any benefit to be had from such.
Okay, let me just tie this up with Catherine's question. First of all, yes, indeed, I believe very strongly that that chemtrails, geoengineering, whatever you want to call it, do exist.
Well, no, there are proposals for it.
Well, no,
It
not
doesn't
proposals.
appear also in any budget
But
that I see.
let me finish my
It's
question.
very expensive.
May I finish my question?
Yes, but
Okay.
take my point about the budget. as well.
Of course I've done that.
Yes.
The answer to your budget question is easy, and that is basically it's black budget.
It's too big.
No. I could show you pictures of an airplane, of a tanker that actually crashed in California, spewing all this stuff all over the runway. But we'll do that later.
Yeah, what I'm looking for, as I've said, the
Yeah.
single question,
Yes.
which because I don't want to spend much time on this.
No.
The single
Neither do I.
question that I have, which you can't answer now, is I want to see a list of peer-reviewed papers in respective journals that gives me a clear indication that on a global scale,
Yes.
the atmospheric monitoring is systematically showing changes other than changes that I would expect from the growth of an industrial civilization. That's my
Respond-
one question.
Yeah, okay.
Unless that can be answered.
May I respond to that? I'll answer it right now. The answer is two words. Marcia Angel, your respected peer-reviewed
No,
journalist.
that's not enough. Either you produce the papers, or I'm not going further with this subject. It's as simple
I've
as
made
that.
a list. I've
So
put it on my
we now move
list
on
of
to
lists.
something.
Okay,
Yeah.
but I'm going to dovetail, yes. I just want to dovetail that with Catherine's earlier question, if I may.
Yeah.
And that is, if we acknowledge Bill Gates' statement to be true, I mean authentic, all right, that they're using...
Well,
the
take
fact-
it ad argumentum, because
Yes,
I'm always
I-
nervous of YouTube videos, even though I appear in them quite a lot myself.
Yeah, okay,
Yeah.
I'd argumentum, fine. But would you acknowledge then, or agree that there is a depopulation agenda?
Well, it is clear from what Ted Turner has said, what Bill Gates has said, what Gorbachev has said, what a number of environmental organizations around the world have said, that there are human haters who think that there are too many of us on the planet and that there ought to be a great deal fewer of us. And that if they could find some way of achieving that agenda, they would do so.
Mhm.
That, I think, is clear enough.
And do you think they have found ways of doing that?
No, to be blunt, because again, if you're saying that the atmosphere has been polluted in some way, that this is either neutering us or it is otherwise giving us various kinds of disease that are hugely on the rise. I see no evidence in the epidemiological statistics for that, but again, if there are peer-reviewed papers establishing it, please show me to them.
What about your comment about vaccines being part of that agenda is what led me to that question.
Well, I mean, all I reported there was a remark by Bill Gates that he felt that there should be a depopulation program, and he appeared to be mentioning it in the context of vaccination. So that's one remark by one man.
Right, but considering the fact that they have never done one single study on peer-reviewed or otherwise, on any of the cancer-producing properties of any of the vaccines.
No, they haven't. On the other hand, I am relatively familiar with at least the overall mortality statistics, say, from the United Kingdom, because I was consulted by the insurance industry some years ago as to whether they could offer a new kind of insurance, which is an insurance against extreme old age, which paid out nothing if you died before you were 80, and then it paid out in spades if you lived that long. And my advice was, on looking at the actuarial statistics, that this would be a very imprudent product for them to offer, because of the very great increases in longevity that had already been observed. This was 15 or 20 years ago now, and that therefore I expected this trend to continue and perhaps to accelerate. And on looking at the statistics from time to time, I see that it is accelerating. So I don't see any evidence that if they are trying to depopulate us by various kinds of injections or spraying chemicals around, I don't think they're being very effective at it so far.
1 out of every 3 people gets cancer now.
Yes, they do, but that's still not reducing the world's population, is it? So one of the reasons why 1 out of 3 people are now getting cancer is that they're not getting other diseases, such as infections, that they would have been more prone to get in the past. So I don't find that at all surprising. I mean, these shifts have been very well analysed in the peer-reviewed literature, and I've read quite a few of the papers on it. I don't see that as a problem. But I do not think there's any evidence that governments are spraying us with chemicals from the air. I do not think there's any evidence that there is a serious depopulation program going on, though there is certainly the intent on the part of the environmental movement and some of the billionaires that have decided that it's fashionable and profitable for them to adopt it, to say that they would like such a thing to happen. But I do not see any such thing happening in the near future, if at all. Because, as Edmund Burke used to say, the price of liberty is eternal vigilance. And provided we keep our eyes open and our minds open, and we keep a close eye on what our governments do, and we scrutinise them as thoroughly as we should, then even if they were to think of trying to get away with such a thing, they would fail, just as they have failed in their concerted international effort to try to tell us there's a problem with the climate that after 17 years without global warming manifestly does not exist. The great thing about the truth is that it is the truth, and they may have the money, the power, and the glory, but we have the truth. We and the truth will win. God bless you all.